War in ancient Rome wasn't all glory and shining armor. Behind every victory stood cold discipline, clever engineering, and ruthless control. The Roman army didn't just fight battles. It built a system designed to crush enemies, starve cities, and turn peace itself into a weapon. Here are 8 things that made Roman warfare far more brutal than you think. Number 1. Ruthless discipline. The Roman army ran on strict rules and shared habit. Each soldier swore a personal oath called the sacramentum. Breaking it brought death or open disgrace. Days followed the same pattern. Inspections came at dawn, and orders were clear. Men then marched in full gear for 15 to 20 miles. The day ended with a fortified camp built before the evening meal. Engineers marked the plan, and the ranks supplied the labor. Streets and gates followed the same layout that every soldier knew. Ditches, stakes, and towers went up fast. Sentries took posts and passwords were issued for the night. This repeated design cut the risk of surprise attacks. It also kept nerves steady after long marches. Routine did the heavy lifting. Training used practice weapons that were heavier than the real ones. The goal was simple: build strength and teach a quick, controlled thrust with the short sword. Centurions enforced standards with a vine staff and a hard voice. A missed order could bring strikes in front of the unit. Desertion faced beating to death, known as fustuarium. In rare crises, a guilty unit could face decimation, which killed 1 man in 10 by lot and froze panic before it spread. Discipline lived inside small teams. 8 men shared a tent, tools, and rations in a group called a contubernium. If 1 man lost gear, the whole group paid an extra duty or reduced rations. Equipment checks were routine and written down. Latrines stood outside the camp, and water points were guarded. Sick and wounded went to field hospitals. These rules cut disease and kept the army ready to move. On the battlefield, discipline shaped every move. Pilum volleys landed just before contact and made enemy shields heavy and awkward. The shield wall closed, and the short sword worked from behind cover. Trumpets and standards carried orders through dust and fear. Tired ranks rotated with fresh ones without chaos. Rewards reinforced the system. Valor earned metal decorations and pay bonuses. Punishment and praise worked together and turned fear into habit, which made Roman warfare brutally efficient. Number 2. The kill zone toolkit. The Roman army turned warfare into a science of control and destruction. Every piece of their equipment was designed for a specific purpose. The pilum, a heavy throwing spear, was one of the most effective tools on the battlefield. Soldiers threw it right before close combat. Its long iron shank bent on impact, making enemy shields useless and forcing opponents to drop them. That single move broke the enemy's line and created confusion. Once the pilum volley hit, soldiers switched to the gladius. This short sword was built for stabbing, not swinging. It allowed fast and deadly thrusts in tight formations. Combined with the curved rectangular shield called the scutum, each soldier became both protected and dangerous. The front line acted as a living wall, and every step forward tightened the Roman grip. Their formations worked like a machine. The first line absorbed the initial clash. The second line attacked over the shoulders of the first. The third line waited to replace tired men. Signals from horns and banners guided these rotations even in clouds of dust and blood. The result was a moving kill zone where enemies had no space to recover or retreat. Special tactics increased the brutality. The famous testudo, or turtle, allowed units to advance under a shell of shields against arrows and stones. Archers, slingers, and cavalry auxiliaries from different provinces added speed and range. The combination of precise infantry and flexible support forces created total battlefield control. Roman generals used this system not for glory, but for results. Each part of their gear and every command aimed to break enemy formations fast and clean. There was no wasted effort, no wild heroics. It was organized violence at its peak. The Roman kill zone was not chaos. It was calculation, and that is what made their warfare terrifyingly efficient. Number 3. Siege by starvation. When the Roman army faced a walled city, they did not rush in. They surrounded it and waited until hunger became their strongest weapon. This method, known as siege by starvation, was one of the most brutal and effective tactics in ancient warfare. The Romans understood that fear and exhaustion could defeat enemies faster than swords. A Roman siege started with engineers. They built 2 sets of fortifications. The first line, called the circumvallation, faced inward to trap the defenders. The second line, called the contravallation, faced outward to stop any help from reaching the city. Between these lines, Roman soldiers built watchtowers, ditches, and wooden walls. The trapped population quickly realized that escape was impossible. Next came the slow destruction of supply lines. The Romans cut access to rivers and wells. They burned crops and seized livestock. They controlled every road and trade route. Days turned into weeks. Food inside the city ran out. Water became precious. Disease spread among the starving civilians. Panic broke morale faster than any battle could. The Romans also used siege engines to increase pressure. Catapults, ballistae, and onagers launched stones and flaming missiles day and night. These weapons destroyed towers, broke gates, and kept the defenders from sleeping. When the city walls finally weakened, soldiers advanced under heavy shields in the testudo formation and broke through the gates. If the city surrendered early, it might be spared. But if it resisted too long, Rome made an example of it. The population could be enslaved, leaders executed, and the city burned. This was psychological warfare at its core. Rome wanted every other city to see what defiance cost. Siege by starvation showed that Roman power was not only in strength, but also in patience. They turned time itself into a weapon, and time always took their side. Number 4, camps that locked the night. Every night, no matter how far they marched or how tired they were, Roman soldiers built a camp. This routine was not a choice. It was an order. The goal was to make sure no army could surprise them while they slept. The Roman camp was more than a resting place. It was a fortress built from the ground up before sunset. When the legion stopped for the day, engineers immediately measured and marked the land. They created a square or rectangular layout with perfect organization. Around the edges, they dug deep ditches and raised high earthen walls. Sharp wooden stakes were driven on top of the rampart for defense. Only 4 gates were built, placed at angles so enemies could not charge straight in. Inside the walls, streets were laid out like a small city. Every soldier knew exactly where his tent stood and where the commander's quarters were located. This design allowed the army to set up and pack up quickly. It also created discipline after long marches. The soldiers knew what to do without thinking. Some guarded the perimeter. Others cooked or repaired weapons. There was no confusion and no wasted time. If the enemy tried a night attack, they met traps, spikes, and armed guards ready for battle. Each camp became a message to local people. It showed that Rome controlled every step of the road. Even in foreign lands, the legions acted like they were at home. The camps also gave soldiers safety and routine. They could sleep, eat, and prepare for the next day's march without fear. These nightly fortresses turned the Roman army into a moving city. Wherever they went, order followed. Enemies saw that Rome did not rest. It built walls faster than others could plan an attack. That constant readiness made Roman warfare both unstoppable and deeply intimidating. Number 5, punishment as policy. In the Roman army, discipline was not just about training. It was enforced through fear and severe punishment. Every soldier knew that mistakes on the battlefield or disobedience in camp could cost him his life. This strict system was the backbone of Roman military success. It turned ordinary men into soldiers who followed orders without hesitation. Commanders had full authority to punish their troops. Even minor offenses, such as losing equipment or leaving the formation, could lead to public beatings. The punishment known as fustuarium meant being beaten to death by fellow soldiers for serious crimes like desertion or theft. It was a brutal way to remind everyone that loyalty to the legion mattered more than individual life. For entire units that showed cowardice, the Romans used decimation. 1 out of every 10 men was executed while the others watched. It was a rare punishment, but the fear of it kept the rest in line. Public punishment was a tool of control. Executions happened in front of the whole army. The message was clear. Rome rewarded bravery, but crushed disobedience. This culture of fear created absolute discipline. A Roman soldier didn't fight only for victory. He fought to avoid the shame and pain of failure. Rewards balanced the system. Soldiers who showed courage in battle could earn medals, money, and promotions. Generals gave donatives special payments after successful campaigns to keep morale high. The combination of strict punishment and earned reward made the army efficient and loyal. Punishment as policy extended beyond the battlefield. Conquered peoples who resisted Roman rule faced destruction, heavy taxes, or slavery. Rebellions were crushed quickly and brutally to set an example for others. Rome's strength came not only from weapons, but from fear. That fear kept both soldiers and subjects under control, turning discipline into a powerful weapon of empire. Number 6. Conquest as a business. For Rome, war was never just about defense or glory. It was a business that kept the empire running. Every new conquest brought money, land, and resources that fed the Roman economy. Generals, senators, and soldiers all had something to gain from expansion. The richer the victory, the more rewards were shared. When Roman legions captured a city, the first thing they did was take control of its wealth. Gold, silver, livestock, and grain were seized and recorded. Temples were stripped of valuables. Captured people were sold as slaves, and those profits went directly to the state or to the commanders who led the campaign. This constant flow of spoils funded future wars and filled the treasuries of Rome. War also created opportunities for Roman citizens. Merchants followed the armies to set up trade in newly conquered territories. Engineers built roads and bridges that later served both military and commercial use. Land was divided and given to veterans, which secured loyalty and spread Roman influence deeper into new regions. Each victory extended the tax network. Conquered provinces were required to send annual payments in money, goods, or grain. Generals used war to rise in politics. A successful campaign meant power in the Senate and the chance to command more legions. This turned ambition into another driving force for conquest. The more wars Rome fought, the more its leaders and soldiers profited. Even peace had a price. Once Rome controlled an area, it charged taxes to maintain its garrisons and government officials. The conquered paid for their own occupation. This system made Rome stronger with each victory. Conquest became a cycle of profit, power, and expansion. Behind every battle stood an accountant counting the gains. Roman warfare was brutal, not only on the field, but also in the way it turned destruction into steady income. Number 7. Outsourced fury. As the Roman Empire expanded, it learned that power could come from using others to fight its battles. Instead of relying only on Roman-born soldiers, commanders began recruiting fighters from conquered and allied regions. These men were called auxiliaries. They came from Gaul, Spain, North Africa, Greece, and many other places. Each brought their own style of combat, which gave Rome an enormous advantage on every front. Auxiliary troops filled the gaps that Roman legions could not cover. The legions were strong in close combat, but they lacked fast cavalry and skilled archers. To fix this, Rome hired Numidian horsemen, Syrian archers, and Balearic slingers. These fighters moved quickly, attacked from a distance, and created confusion before the main Roman line even reached the enemy. Together, they formed a flexible and deadly force. The deal was simple: serve Rome faithfully and earn Roman citizenship after 25 years. This promise motivated thousands to fight hard for the empire. Over time, entire families from faraway lands joined the Roman army, blending their cultures with Roman discipline. The auxiliaries wore different armor, but followed the same strict command system. On the battlefield, they obeyed Roman officers and fought in perfect coordination with the legions. This mix of nationalities made the army more effective, but also more ruthless. Enemies faced fighters who knew their own local terrain, but now worked under Roman command. One tribe might end up fighting another that spoke the same language. Rome used that strategy deliberately to prevent unity among subject peoples. By outsourcing parts of its fury, Rome turned diversity into a weapon. It expanded faster, fought longer, and adapted to any landscape. The auxiliaries became the empire's hidden edge. Their loyalty was bought, but their skill made Roman warfare far more brutal and efficient than any single nation's army could ever achieve. Number 8. Peace that hurt. After the fighting stopped, Rome called it peace, but that peace often came with pain. The term Pax Romana, or Roman peace, sounded like stability and prosperity. In reality, it was control enforced by military presence and strict Roman law. Once an area was conquered, legions stayed behind to make sure it never rebelled again. Their camps became permanent forts, and their patrols watched the roads day and night. Cities that accepted Roman rule had to pay heavy taxes. Grain, gold, and livestock were collected to feed Rome's growing empire. Local leaders who cooperated were rewarded with positions, wealth, and protection. Those who resisted lost everything. Families were separated, and property was confiscated. The empire worked like a machine. Every province was expected to produce something: food, soldiers, or money. And any sign of disobedience was crushed fast. The presence of the Roman army kept order, but also brought tension. Soldiers could demand supplies, seize land for forts, and punish crimes on their own judgment. For many ordinary people, Roman peace felt like a quiet occupation. Their local traditions faded as Roman language, laws, and customs replaced them. Roads, temples, and theaters were built, but they carried the mark of Rome, not of the people who lived there before. Even religion was shaped by this control. Conquered peoples were allowed to worship their gods only if they also honored the emperor. This made loyalty a religious duty and turned faith into a political tool. The Roman version of peace was not about comfort. It was about predictability. Trade moved safely. Taxes arrived on time. Rebellions rarely lasted long. But beneath that order was fear. Pax Romana meant that Rome's sword stayed sheathed, but everyone knew it could strike again at the first sign of defiance. That is what made Roman peace so brutally effective.